Hey, what's going on, everybody? Chris Meaney here of FTN, taking a look at some of the top DFS plays for Week 1 of the NFL season. It is finally here, and we have you covered over at FTNDaily.com. Plenty of articles. We'll have cheat sheets. Our brand new DFS NFL Optimizer is live, and it is unbelievable. That is included in our DFS package, as well as an opportunity to chat to some of the top DFS players in the industry. Two Gun has won not one, not two, but three millionaire makers. Quite the NFL DFS resume for Two Gun. An opportunity to chat to him in our Discord channel, pick his brain, see what he was thinking week in and week out with a game plan, as well as just his content, which is available at FTNDaily.com. The articles, projections, ownership projections, it's all there for you at FTNDaily.com/pricing. Let's get after this video here. Going to come at you once a week. Hit you high and hit you low at each position with some of my favorite plays. It's not going to be just all studs. You're not going to get anything out of me saying, oh, play Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. Now, there are a couple studs that I will talk about today. Sometimes it's worth spending up for some of these stud players who could still come with high ownership numbers. We'll get to those players in just a little bit, but there's a lot of value here in Week 1 because the pricing has been out over at DraftKings and FanDuel for weeks, and a lot has happened since then. So you can have a nice, well-balanced lineup with some high priced tier guys, as well as some value here. So let's start at the quarterback position. Kyler is actually my favorite quarterback, but he's not the guy that I'm going to talk about. I'm rocking the hat for Mr. Jalen Hurts here, who has a great matchup against the Atlanta Falcons, who allowed the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks last season. Jalen Hurts checks in at 6.44 on DK and 7.6 on FanDuel, the 8th highest priced quarterback on both sites. 4 starts last season, 3 full games. He was pulled in the final Week 17 game against Washington. He racked up 272 rushing yards in those 4 games, averaging 68 rushing yards. He had at least 60 in 3 of the 4. His first start came against the Saints, and he hit the century mark on the ground. It was the first 100-yard rusher against New Orleans in over 3 years, and he made it look pretty easy. He has a very solid floor. His rushing prop is at 40. That's like starting with a free touchdown, and I think he surpasses that. He's got the high ceiling because of the decent floor with his rushing ability. He has 2 games of 300 yards passing and 60 rushing yards. The most ever 300-yard passing games and 40 rushing yard games for Steve Young. So the fact that Hurts has already done this twice is pretty remarkable. Just a taste of his upside with a depleted O-line last year and not a lot of weapons in the passing game. The offensive line is coming in pretty healthy. This game in a dome, both defenses are pretty shaky at best. I think we could see some fireworks here. I mentioned the Falcons allowing the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks. How about the 9th most rushing yards to the position and 6 rushing touchdowns, 2 off the league high. Sam Darnold is my cheap punt value quarterback play at $5K. Everything is set up perfectly for him to have success in Carolina. It just so happens to be a revenge spot against his former squad. He leaves Adam Gase, and now Joe Brady's going to call the shots for him, and that is an absolute plus. And look at the weapons that he has surrounding him. Christian McCaffrey, one of the best pass catchers in the NFL. DJ Moore, also explosive after the catch. His old buddy Robbie Anderson and Terrace Marshall, a new shiny toy in this offense for Brady, who is he knows all about what Marshall can bring to the table, having coached him at LSU. I like Darnold at $5K. At the running back position, Dalvin Cook is that stud that I really like as a top play here this week in a great spot against Cincinnati. He's 9-1 on DK, a decent pivot off Christian McCaffrey. I like him more than CMC this week. 9-4 on FanDuel. You save yourself $1,000 if you drop down to Dalvin Cook from CMC. The Bengals allowed the 4th most rushing yards per game last year, 148. 5.1 yards per attempt, the second most. 20 runs of at least 20 rushing or 20 yards. That was the second most, and the 8th most fantasy points to running backs. You know what Minnesota wants to do. They're going to run the rock, and they're going to run it all over Cincinnati. I think we could see 20-plus touches for Dalvin Cook. A shout out here to James Robinson and Naji Harris. I just think both of these running backs are going to be pretty chalky. I think they're good cash game plays. They're certainly going to return value. They're priced pretty cheap. Naji Harris is 6'3 on DK and 6'5 on FanDuel. I have no idea why. He's a guy that's going to definitely touch the ball 20 times, could rack up 3 or 4 catches. Say what you want about the offensive line. The spot is okay. The Bills allowed the 13th most fantasy points to running backs last year. They ranked among the leaders in missed tackles. It's just a running back inside this offense. We have so much history to go off of here. D'Angelo Williams, James Conner, Le'Veon Bell, backs that just got the ball in Mike Tomlin's offense. 20-plus touches. Like, he is underpriced by $1,000. I think we'll see him next week, probably mid-7s, especially if he has a good game. And I think at some point we'll see him mid to high 8s. He's that good. His ceiling is pretty high. James Robinson against the Texans. Again, the pricing was out a while ago. Travis Etienne is not going to play. 6'4" on DK and 5'9" on FanDuel. Really good price on FanDuel and a really good opportunity, good spot for him to rack up some yards. The Texans allowed 7 40-plus runs last season, a league high, 5.2 yards per attempt. That's also a league high, and 24 rushing touchdowns, the second most, 3 behind the Detroit Lions. The most rushing yards per game at 160, and the second most fantasy points to running backs. Wide receivers, my favorite on the board is Calvin Ridley. He's going to be very chalky, but I'm going to eat that chalk. I like him against Philadelphia. He's 7'9" on DK and 8'1" on FanDuel. He had hit the century mark 8 times last season. He really hit career highs across the board. Catches with 90, targets with 143, and just shy of 1,400 yards, 9.6 yards per catch. 4th in air yards in the NFL. 41% of his team's air yards. Julio Jones is gone. And he passed, the test that I had for him. Like, I was zoned in when Julio is not playing. Can he handle top coverage? And he passed that test with flying colors. He averaged 109 receiving yards in 8 games without Julio, 2 more catches, 3 more targets, and 33 more yards without Julio Jones. Matt Ryan led the league in passing attempts last year. In each of the last 3 seasons, he's been inside the top 3. The Eagles allowed the 9th most fantasy points to wide receivers. Again, this could be a shootout. There could be a lot of points here. I think Ridley hits the century mark. He was 5th in ADOT, a deep play guy there, and the Eagles struggle passing or just stopping the deep ball. And sticking inside the same game, last play from it, Atlanta allowed the most fantasy points to wide receivers last year. Devonta Smith at 4.5 on DK and 5.3 on FanDuel is just criminally underpriced. The former Heisman Trophy winner had a fantastic season with Bama, and he's one of those passing options for Hurts that he didn't have last season, and the two are very familiar with each other, having hooked up in on touchdown passes already in college. All right, rapid fire through some more wide receivers here for you. Marvin Jones at 3.6 on DK and 5.8 on FanDuel. Again, against the Texans. The second most yards allowed last year. They're just awful, and they're just going to be trading away some of their veteran pieces. This is going to be a very bad football team. 7 grabs for 93 yards in the preseason, 9 targets in 2 preseason games. Trevor Lawrence really leaning on the vet, and I think he could be the number 1 option for Lawrence. He's just too cheap here at 3.6. The Texans, the 8th most receiving yards, the 7th most fantasy points to wideouts, the 8th most catches, and the 4th most touchdowns to wide receivers. 11 plays of at least 40 yards through the air, the second most in the NFL, 1 behind the league high. Corey Davis, another guy underpriced who had a really good preseason. He ran 13 routes. He was targeted on 10 of them. Zach Wilson was locked in on Corey Davis. He said he has confidence if it's a one-on-one on the side that he's going to win that matchup, and he hopes that Corey Davis has the confidence in him that he will get them the ball. That's exactly what I want to hear at 4.9, a really good price. Elijah Moore at 3K is very interesting as well, a decent little pivot. I think I like this Carolina and Jets game more than I probably should. There's just a lot of underpriced dudes in this contest or in this matchup. And Elijah Moore will be in a really good spot if Jamison Crowder doesn't play, who is questionable due to COVID, and I think he's dealing with a groin injury. T. Higgins, as well as these other Bengals wide receivers, are very underpriced over on DK. Higgins is 4.7. He's the cheapest of the 3. Boyd and Chase are more expensive than him, but over on FanDuel, he's 6K, so T. Higgins is the most expensive over there, and that makes a lot of sense. Higgins is a great, great value on DK. He's also probably going to be pretty chalky, but I think that's okay. He was the deep threat in Joe Burrow's offense last season. 69 yards is what he averaged in 9 games with Burrow, 46 without him. The first 2 weeks, he did nothing. He had 0 in week 1 and 6 in week 2, which is understandable for a rookie wide receiver learning the playbook and a rookie quarterback as well. But the next 7 games, my goodness, these two were on the same page. Higgins had double-digit fantasy points in each of those 7 games, 18 plus in 4, and had 20 points in 3. Games down the stretch, or I say down the stretch, but before the injury happened to Joe Burrow. My top priced dude is Travis Kelce. And I know I'm not doing you any favors here by saying play Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is always a good play, but with no Darren Waller on the slate here today, Kelce against Cleveland at 8.3 on DK and 8.5 on FanDuel, you can make it work with all this value on the board. He had at least 82 yards in his 8 final games, 7 touchdowns in his last 7 as well. Kyle Pitts at 4.4 is interesting, but he's going to be pretty chalky. Wouldn't be shocked if he comes with a higher ownership projection than Travis Kelce. If you want to punt at the tight end position, my guy would be Tyler Kroft at 2.5 on DK and 4.7 on FanDuel. Chris Herndon was traded last week, and the Jets cut 3 tight ends, including Ryan Griffin. Again, back to this game, Zach Wilson is 5K as well. It's a cheap little punt play. You could fall into 3 or 4 catches and maybe a touchdown, and certainly would return value at that price. But Travis Kelce is probably my favorite play of the entire weekend. If you're looking for more, ftndaily.com. I'll circle back on this video. If you have any questions, please leave them there, or you can reach out at Chris Meaney. Again, it's finally here. Enjoy. Good luck. Hopefully the cash piles up for you this season. We'll check in with you for week 2 plays. Have a good one. Cheers.